In the previous classes, we saw how to create the tables. Now, when we create a table normally, so there may be a possibility of creating duplicate records. And if some columns, like if they don't need to be null, but still there is a chance of updating it as null. And some columns you want to be unique, like mobile numbers will be there. For two records, you don't want to give duplicate numbers because those numbers has to be unique. If you give the same numbers, then it will be a problem. Then few fields you should not keep as empty. Let's say some important things are there. So that column, it has to have record. So last time when we created the table, we didn't provide any constraints. So we can upload the null values, we can insert the duplicate values, all those things are allowed. Now we will discuss about how we can put the constraints when we create any table, how we can create the constraints, and with those, how we can achieve proper table creation. So the syntax almost same only. Whenever you create a table, create a table name, then column names you will give. But while creating the column names, you will provide the constraints like which column should have which constraint. So let's create one table, normal table, previously whatever we created. Create table employee ID into it will give. So generally like this we'll create the table, but here we didn't provide like now with this, if we insert the data, there may be a possibility of creating duplicate records. And employee name, even if we enter the null, it will take, but employee name should not be null. Then employee salary also should not be null. Employee number, it can be null, but it should be unique. Some people don't provide their number, but it should be unique. If they provide there should not be duplicate numbers because two people cannot have same number. Now how we can achieve this particular scenario? So first we will see employee name, it should not be null. So this can be duplicate because few people can have same name, but it should not be null. So for this, the constraints what we can use is not null. So space, after giving the employee name, the column name, then the data type, we will provide the constraint called not null. So we are saying this column, when you try to insert a new record or data, this cannot be null. You should give some value to this column. So that we are mentioning while creating the table itself. Next, employee salary. So employee salary also cannot be null. So for this also we can give not null. And employee mobile number. So now mobile number can be null, but it should not have a duplicate values. So for this we have one constraint called unique. Unique means it won't have any duplicates. Just like set, how we will have the unique values. So if we give this unique, what it will do is, so the employee number, if you give some number, and for the next record, second record, if you try to give the same number, it won't allow you. It will throw some error. So with this, we achieved the columns, but till now we didn't achieve. Now also we can insert the duplicate data. So to avoid this insertion of duplicate data, so every table should have one primary key. Primary key means based on that primary key, you can differentiate or you can find each record in the table, which is very unique. So let's say you have created one employee with 101 employee ID. So in real time, the employee IDs will be unique. It will be different from the other people. So first employee joined the company, then the number will be 101. If the second employee joined, then the number will be 102. So like this, it will be increasing. So next, if second employee comes, you should not give 101. So to avoid that kind of scenarios, we will give primary key. We will make one column or multiple columns as primary key, so that that key duplicate is not allowed. For the same thing, you can use unique also. But why we are giving it as primary? So unique key also is doing the same thing, making you all the values as unique. But in unique, null values are allowed. But in primary key, null values are not allowed. So it's like you will enter the primary key definitely. So if you don't enter the primary key, you will get an error like it should not be not null. And if you enter some value which is a duplicate, that time also it will throw the error saying it should be unique. So both the scenarios will be covered, and every table should have at least one primary key. So that is a basic scenario, because you have to differentiate between the different records. Otherwise, there is no pointing in inserting the duplicate records, because all the data you cannot differentiate which row belongs to which record. So for that purpose, every table we will make one primary key. So now below we will make this as primary key. So how we can make any key as primary key or any column as primary key means, you just have to mention primary key, and in the bracket you have to mention which column you are making it as primary key. So here we are making employee ID as primary key. So like this we are mentioning it. So now in this particular table, the employee ID will be the primary key. So if you want to refer the data from this one, you can directly call select star from employee, where employee ID equals to 101. So in that entire table, only 101, one record only will be there, because you cannot enter duplicate records because it's a primary key. So if you see here, points to remember for primary key. So first thing, a column or columns. So you can make one particular column as a primary key, or combination of 3 columns or 4 columns as a primary key. So if you want to create a primary key, you should define a primary key constraints when you create or modify table. So we are creating the table. In this time only we are making one column as primary key. So we are defining that constraint. So when multiple columns, if we involve, it is a composite primary key. So what is the use of primary key means? It is good for storage and performance both. So storage, you are not allowing duplicate values, and performance also, you can easily fetch whatever the data you want by using the primary key. So primary key always has unique data. So it won't allow you the duplicate record. It will internally, even though you don't provide it as unique that explicitly, but internally it will work, and it will only give you the unique data. And it won't have null value. So you don't need to mention not null also. So it will be automatically won't allow the null value. So there can be no duplicate value for primary key. So a table can contain only one primary key. So only one primary key should be there in the table. Either multiple columns together you will make one primary key, or single column you will make one primary key. So for the table you should have only one primary key. But you can have many unique columns, many not null columns, and many normal columns. But you should have only one primary key in the table. So when we specify a primary key constraints for a table, database engine automatically create a unique index. So you don't need to you don't need to mention it explicitly. Database system automatically makes that column as unique. So the main advantage of this uniqueness is that we get fast access. Since it's easy to differentiate between the columns, it will easily access. We can easily fast. You don't need to fetch everything and compare. So if you give 101, there will be only 101 one record. So it will directly fetch that record. So we have created, so primary key, then that particular ID we will give in the space. We will give primary key. We are mentioning this column is a primary key. So I will create the primary key. Okay, miss the comma. So I will create this. So this is created. Now employee table is created. We have employee ID, name, salary, number, all the 4 things we have. Now let me try to create. So let me try to insert some records into this. First, I will create proper record. Then whatever the constraints we have used, we will try to like give false values for that and see what kind of errors we will get. Insert into employee values. So first I am giving 101, next Rahul. So name, then salary 50,000, then mobile number I am giving something. So this here we have followed the proper scenario. We didn't provide any null values. So since it's a first record, so unique is also there. So it inserted the first record 101 Rahul 50,000 and the number is also. Now again I will try to insert the same record with the same values. So earlier when the constraints was not there, it is allowed. Now let's see what kind of error we will get. It is telling employee ID unique constraint failed. Since employee ID is a primary key, you should not allow duplicate values. So that's why it is not allowing the duplicate records. Now I will change this 102. So what all things we made as not null? Employee name, salary, everything we made not null. Now I will try to put this Rahul as null. So I will put this as null. So now let me run this SQL. It is telling employee name, not null constraint failed. Because we gave this constraint as not null for this column, so you should not enter null value, you should enter some value. So it not null means duplicate values are allowed, but you should not give not null. Now I will change the name to something else, Virat. And this also same, salary is not null. So even if you give null, it will throw error. Now I am giving the same mobile number, but we mentioned that employee number as unique. Let's see how this will work. So again, I'm getting the error unique constraint failed because in this column already in this table already there is one column with the same data. Now we are trying to enter the same data, but we mentioned that column as unique. So you should not enter a duplicate value. That's why it's giving the issue. Now just I will change. I just added one number and now I will run. So it is entered because I have changed the number. So like this, we can add constraints. So you can, so if you want some columns to be like it has some values and you should not allow null values, then you can make that as not null. If you want to make one column like duplicate values are not entered, then you can give it as unique and every table should have one primary key. Now there is no chance to create a duplicate values in this employee. All records will be unique because the employee ID definitely you should give the new value and we made employee number also to give the new value. So with this we can achieve the all the constraints. So no duplicate data is also allowed. So then there is another concept called foreign key. So foreign key, when this particular foreign key will comes into picture means, so there are two tables. So one table stores the data of customer orders or customers details and next table stores the data of customer orders. Whatever this customer kept the orders, those orders, it will be in the another table. So now there are two tables, two different tables. I wanted to connect these two tables because there should be some common point between these two tables. Then only I can see which customer placed which order. Otherwise, if customers table is different and orders table is different and there is no connection, then we don't know which customer placed which order. So that's why there should be some connection between the two tables. Customer ID both in the same or something we can give. So for that, what we will do is whatever there in the parent class, let's say customer is a parent table. Now the child table is whatever the customer placed that orders, that will be child table. Now, so if we use some parent table column in the child table column, then that is called foreign key because we are making some connection between these two tables. So in relational databases, a foreign key is a field or column that is used to establish a link between two tables. So if there is a link, then only you can see the data from both the tables using only one column. So in simple words, you can say a foreign key in one table used to point primary key in another table. So now we are saying we have two tables A and B. In the B we have foreign key. So that foreign key is a primary key in the table A. So that we will see with the example how it is interlinked. So while declaring table only, like how we declare the primary key, same way we will declare the foreign key also. So let's say I will create one more table here. I have created employee table. Now I wanted to see employee leaves or so employee leaves or employee health benefit, health insurance we will take. So which employee took which health insurance? So I will create table employee so health. I am creating a table employee health. So now I have to create some columns. So in this also health ID. So there should be some particular primary key in this also to segregate one by one. So for each health policy, we will give one ID. Int, then health policy, aircare 100. Health, mm, let's say duration. Health policy should not be null, should not be not null. So now we have created some policies. So this employee health will store if some employee takes some health policy, all the data will be stored here. So when he take the policy, it will create one ID for him and it will mention what policy he took and how many like duration it will mention. But let's say if it mention this one, health ID will be 1001. Now health policy is something like some policy he took and the duration will be 180 days or 1 year. Now we don't know which employee took that policy. So policy details were created, but which employee took that policy we don't know. So for that scenario, in this table we have to mention that employee details also. So employee, how we can refer? We can refer him using employee ID because that's the one unique. You can refer by employee name, but let's say two employees are there with Rahul name. So we don't know which Rahul took which policy. So the ideal way is using the primary key. So if you put the data 101 here, 101 took this health insurance, then 102 took this health insurance. Maybe 101 might have taken two insurances. So for first insurance, one ID will be generated, and the second insurance, another ID will be generated. So one ID will be that policy, then second ID, the new policy with the same ID number. So you have created all the table. Now you need to create the foreign key to give the link between these two tables. So employee is the main table and employee, if you take some health policy, the data will be stored here. So to make foreign key, you have to mention foreign key person ID. So you have to create one more column here. So you can create with any name. So, but its ideal way is just create with the same column name because we are creating in a different table. So if you create in the same table, it will be a problem. But if you create in the different table with same column name, there won't be any issue. So if you give the same name, it's easy to refer. We can say in this table, this is the primary key. In this table, this is the foreign key. Now employee ID, this is integer. Now we have mentioned that. Now we need to make this employee ID as foreign key. So the foreign key is, so this one you have to mention. So after creating the foreign key, you need to mention which table it is referring. Let's say there are multiple tables with employee ID column name. Now just you mentioned employee ID, but from which table you don't know. So that's why you need to refer employee table, employee ID. Let's say you have another employee history or employee one employee to another table with same column name. So that time you don't know which table you have to refer. So in this scenario, we have to refer employee table, employee ID. So we are saying foreign key employee ID. It should be referring to some table. So references, we should say references, which table? So employee table. In the employee table, which column? Employee ID. So we are making it as a foreign key saying in this table, this particular column will be referring to the some other table primary key. So like this we mention. Now here we have one employee ID foreign key also. Now let's say foreign key we created references person's ID. So now let me run this. So it is created, employee health also created. Now this is empty. Insert into employee health 1001 values 1001, then health policy, let's say group, then 365 days. Then you have to give which employee created. So it should be either 101 or 102. 101. Now this is one record which I will enter now. So this is one. So 101 employee used this policy. Now for the same 101 employee, I will take one more policy. Let's say accident policy. So he took for only 180 days or maybe 700 days. So same employee, 101 employee only, run SQL. Now if someone asks you employee ID 101, how many or what all policies he took, then you can just come to this employee health. You will have this employee ID 101. Just give select star from employee health where employee ID equals to 101. You will get all that employee health detail, health insurance details in single query. Now let's say we will create for 102 also. So he took one policy like extend policy for 365 days. Run this SQL. Now, if you see here, 102 also took one policy here. So like this, there is a connection between these two tables. The connection is this is employee details and this is employee health policy details. And the common point is this employee ID. With this, we can see which employee took which policy between the two tables. So this is how you will connect two tables by mentioning the foreign key. So the syntax of the foreign key is, so normally how you will create while creating the table only. So you will give primary key. Same way you will provide. So there should be one column in this table which will refer as a foreign key. So you will create that column and you will make that column as a foreign key. Then we should be referring this particular column to the parent table column. So that's what we are doing here. So we are referring it to employee table, employee ID, so that we are mentioning these two tables are having some connection. So the difference between primary key and foreign key is, so primary key cannot be null. So when you define a primary key, it cannot be null. But foreign key, there may be a chance of null. So it's not like it's unique or it can be duplicate also, because one, just now we saw one example. One employee can take multiple insurance. So this can be duplicate also. And this can be null also. But primary key cannot be null and primary key cannot be duplicated. So these are the main differences between the primary key and foreign key. So every table should have a primary key, but every table may or may not have unique key. If there is a connection with some other table, then you will have foreign key. But if there is no connection between two tables, you don't need to have foreign key, because if you see the first table, it won't have any foreign key, but the second table is having the foreign key. So there is no mandatory rule to have a foreign key, but every table should have a primary key. Then unique key we already discussed. When you want to make one column as unique, then you will mention it as unique, so that it won't allow the duplicate values, but it will allow one null value. So this is the constraints we will give when we are creating the tables. So the main constraints are, first we will give primary key, then not null, unique, then foreign key. So these all things mainly we will focus on constraints.